Is Richard Lowe, and I'm with the Conversations with Influencers podcast. And I'm here with Jothi Dugar, who is a global influencer. She's one of the few leading female cybersecurity leaders in the world, and she's a people transformation change agent for organizations as well as individuals. Welcome to the show.
Thank you so much. I'm thrilled to be here today, Richard.
Well, thank you. So when you say one of the few leading female cybersecurity leaders, that seems curious to me. There aren't that many of those.
I honestly wish there were more, but unfortunately, the number of percentage of women in cybersecurity in general has very, very slowly risen. When I first joined, it was about probably like 5%. Now it's about 14% of women, and cybersecurity leaders being women, it's even lower than that. It's probably about 1 or 2%.
And what's causing that? It seems like it would be an ideal place for women to find a position and a career.
Well, I guess it doesn't seem very ideal, one, because currently it is male dominated. So for women to see themselves in that type of role, especially in a leadership role, when they don't see other leaders that look like them, it doesn't really prompt them to want to be even in that field. But also cybersecurity in general is relatively new. It's really, I joined cybersecurity about 20 years ago when it wasn't even called cybersecurity. It was, information assurance, and there's been a whole lot of other terms put on it. So I would say it's still kind of generally a new field, but it's also very, it's perceived to be very technical. And my goal is to really change that perception of it, because it's really not only about the technical skills. There are parts of it that can be technical, but there's also lots of other parts. It's such a broad field, which most people don't recognize. So there definitely is a lot of scope and room for women and the innate skills that they bring to the table, but it's just not well known.
Interesting. Yeah. I was actually in charge of cybersecurity for Trader Joe's for about 20 years.
Oh, wow.
Before I was a writer. So
Wow.
we have some confluence of our skill set here. And I do know what you mean about there being, it's being treated too technical sometimes. Like, you forget about the non-technical parts. Most break-ins are caused by people, for example, yes, which has nothing to do with technology. It's social engineering. What do you think about
Exactly.
that?
That is my mission, is to basically drive the people-centric approach to cybersecurity from a holistic, using a holistic approach. So since I'm in the holistic wellness business and cybersecurity and technology, I have a pretty unique approach to cyber that I bring in from the wellness world, which is the mind-body energy connection. So if you look at the mind, it's the mindset, and this is where the people come in to focus. Is because if you empower the people, they will make the right decisions. But a lot of times in the cyber world, people are looked at as the weakest link instead of our biggest assets. So if you're treated as the weakest link, you're pretty much going to act as the weakest link.
Well, of course. And a lot of companies don't, or feel that they don't want to train people in cybersecurity because they don't want people to be alarmed, I guess, or aware of even the things. So they're ignorant about, for example, we had a problem where hackers would come in dressed as in a uniform and replace POS terminals, point of sale terminals in stores, with ones that were modified, so that it made a copy of all the card data and sent it off to the hacker site. If the store people don't know about that, they're going to just go along with it.
Right. So, by empowering our people to ask questions, to look for things, say something if you see something, all those kind of things, and really empowering them with the tools, the skills that they need, even in any role, not just the cyber team or the security team or the IT staff. It's pretty much any role. Like when yours is a great example. You know, even a cashier can use cyber safe practices in what they do from a physical security standpoint, and also from, you know, a computer security standpoint. So, and you know, when we talk about social engineering, that can be pretty much anything. It could be, you know, gone are the days or somebody actually has to steal your laptop, you know, because now you could actually do it remotely, because there's so many Wi-Fi's out there that people want to connect to. They choose convenience over security. So so it's been my goal to bring the people-centric approach to cyber. And when we talk about people, we talk about the mindset, the you know, mind body energy connection. Because if you're not in a right frame of mind or a mindset, then you're going to be making simple, easy mistakes that you probably wouldn't have made if you were you know, if you're really taking care of your mental health and well-being.
Well, yeah, I was asking myself how people, I used to ask myself how people fall to the Nigerian scam type things, until I almost fell for one myself. And then I realized how easy it is to be fooled. I had somebody who wanted a big ghostwriting project, and he came in and he seemed real. And it wasn't until he asked to send more money than the book would cost, and then it asked me to refund the rest, that I realized I'm dealing with the scammer, and called him on it, and that was that. But had I not been awake, I'd have been out $40,000, and that would have hurt. So, but it's hard to imagine being in a situation, or it was for me, that I could be ripped off by a scammer until I almost was, and then I realized how close it was.
Yeah, it happens to everyone. Even for me, like I teach dance classes. I have a dance company as well on the side, and you know, sometimes when an offer is too good to be true by someone, you know, it gets you a little bit excited. Like, oh, hey, this person wants to enroll 10 people.
Right,
You know,
right.
and they start asking them questions like, well, you know, they're going to show up on this day, but you know, I need to just wire you the money now. And I'm like, well, can you pay my credit card? Like, no, we're in the hospital and we really want to get our kids in the class to give them something to do. I'm like, you have 10. Okay, first of all, you have 10 kids.
Right.
You know, then they start giving all a bunch of excuses, and I'm like, okay, let me just look up your phone number and Google, and then you find out like, oh, okay, this is kind of a known scam. All right, well, you know.
Yeah, big clue is they won't talk to you. They'll only talk over SMS or over email or something like that. They won't actually talk to you, because then you'll hear their accent and you'll know, okay, this is not legit. And that's one of the first clues is they simply won't talk on the phone.
Yeah. They're like, we're not allowed to take calls in the hospital. I'm like, so which hospital are you at?
And then they ask to wire the money. You know, you don't have to wire the money. Wire transfers, of course, you are not you can't get them back once they're there. So there's all kinds of red flags. I've actually written 4 cybersecurity books now, ghostwritten. And one of them was about this very subject, and it's interesting the number of ways, the red flags that come up that people tend to ignore. And this is all people. Like you said, this has nothing to do with technology.
Exactly. Yeah. I mean, it's people process technology for a reason, and somehow cyber security professionals just most of the time just concentrate on the technology part and a little bit on the process, but you know, really not on the people aspect at all, other than looking at them as weakest links. So, you know, I really found that to be not a very effective or efficient way of cyber, or just really in anything. You know, if we don't empower someone to do the right thing, then how can we call them our weakest link? Because we're not giving them the tools that they need, you know, the knowledge that they need, the information that they need, and also like how to report things. You know, if you take a common person, do they know what to do? Like if your identity gets breached, does every single person know, oh, here's a number you call? Or if they see something suspicious, you know, here's what you do. There's just, you know, no one really knows what is the next step? But if it's a physical emergency, everyone in the world or in the US would know, oh, call 911.
Yeah, like we had a laptop of a senior exec that he was in Colombia, and the laptop got stolen. And he was all freaked out, of course, because it had confidential data on it. And we told him, okay, so when was the last backups? Don't you do that? You're on a laptop in Colombia. We're not going to back you up from, well, does your computer have a password? No, that was too inconvenient. Okay. Do you have the locate me software on it? No, we went down the list, and it's like, okay, you're pretty much, your computer's gone, and there's nothing we can do about it. And whatever confidential data is on there, let's just hope that they just wiped the computer and sold it rather than look at it,
Right.
which is probably what they did. But he was totally freaked.
Yeah. I mean, so yeah, there's just so many. I think the word cybersecurity tends to scare people away because the movies and the films and media just paint it to be, oh, okay, I'm like this dark, I'm in this dark room, wearing a black hoodie and coding away, trying to hack into stuff. And yeah, there are people like that, but that's not everyone, and that's definitely not you if you're a cybersecurity professional. You're not a hacker or criminal.
Yeah, you mentioned that people are the weakest link. Maybe they're the weakest link because they're treated as the weakest link, and they're not treated as a strength, because actually they're a strength. If you train them and you give them the information they need, people can be your asset. But if you treat them as weaknesses, that's what they're going to be.
Yeah, and that's why I always compare it to a physical security incident. When there's a crime scene, the police are always looking for witnesses because they are your biggest strength. Okay, who saw something? Can you describe what happened? They don't treat people as, well, they're the weakest link, so we got this. But when it comes to a security incident, it's almost like they immediately jump to finger pointing and who didn't do their job and why did you click on this link and did you not know any better, or then immediately, without really taking the time to embed security into everyone's roles. So from an organizational perspective, I'm a big proponent of just education, information, and the continuous flow of information. Most organizations have once a year annual security awareness training, and then never again talk about security.
Of course. Yeah. And there's individual security too, where like if your wallet's stolen, what do you do? If your identity's stolen, what do you do? Most people don't have a clue, and they won't have a clue until they go to the cops, and the cops don't know. They're starting to know, but they don't really know what to do, and they're not going to help you that much. So, as an individual, for me, because I'm in cybersecurity, I always have plans for those things. Okay, so what if I lose my wallet? Because hey, there could be a hurricane. I could just lose it because of the hurricane. Right. Might be somebody stole it. So what do? You need that driver's license sometimes. You need those credit cards. So I got duplicates and stuff. So that's kind of important. I was also in charge of disaster recovery at Trader Joe's, so that was the other part of my job. It was kind of interesting. That's a big part of security too.
Yeah.
Huge part, sure. Often overlooked. And what are you going to do when the thing goes down? Because it will go down, and it will self-destruct. They do, even in the cloud.
Right. Yeah. So, I try to bring in. What I'm trying to do now is merge both the cyber worlds and the holistic wellness world together. So bringing the holistic wellness to cyber, because like I said, if your cyber leaders are not taking care of their mental health and wellness, then we know the state of your organization.
Yeah, of course. If your core security people are not healthy mentally, then you've got a problem.
Yeah, and a lot of people tend to resort to or give a lot of importance to the malicious hacker out there and nation state actors trying to hack into our networks. And yes, that is a threat, but then most often what happens is there's a it's what they call insider threat, but the only reason it's a threat is because you haven't empowered these people with the right tools and the right information and the right training, or they're being overworked. So if you're, especially now with the pandemic going on, if you have kids at home, you have spouses at home, you're trying to juggle being a parent and possibly even being a teacher,
Right.
and if you're in the cyber field, you're doing cybersecurity as well. And all it takes is one split second for you to get an email or something if you're configuring something, and you're about to do something, and then your child calls out or starts creating a whole lot of ruckus, and you concentrate on them and you come back and then you accidentally entered the wrong thing or you clicked on the link. Then it's kind of like split second decisions, and that's why it's a threat. Because okay, if you're trained, it's like, oh, you know what, let me pause for a second, like I was really distracted there, maybe I shouldn't be making this kind of decision right now. Let me just pause, let me do some a quick 30 second mental exercise to
Sure.
just kind of get me back into state. So yeah.
There's also the perception of risk. Clicking on a link is considered extremely low risk by most people. So of course they're just going to click on it. Yet it could be high. Like I was expecting a package from the UPS a couple months ago, and guess what came in? There was a scam email from the UPS. So it looked. What did I do? I'm a security guy. I clicked on the friggin' link. Fortunately, Malware Bytes said, "Oh no, you don't want to click on that."
Right.
Because I have multi-layered defense, because that's another important thing. Because I realize I'm not perfect, but
Yeah.
even security people get fooled.
Right. So if you have a set of practices that you can use to kind of just take pauses in the moment. And a lot of people think that taking a pause is then taking away from what they think they'll be more efficient if they don't take a pause and just keep on going for the rest of the day. But really it's the opposite effect. When you keep on going without taking any pauses, then you're really just driving yourself insane. You're going to have less energy at the end. You're going to be less efficient, actually less effective as well. So I always resort to the analogy that I heard from someone about NASCAR drivers. Fastest people in the world, but every single race car driver comes to a complete stop in the middle of the race to take that pause, to check on their tires, to get their car, ready to go again. And I'm sure inside their car, they're getting their mindset and mental state, taking that pause, so, and then they kind of keep going. So if they can do that, all of us can take that moment. I always recommend about 5 minutes every hour to basically rejuvenate yourself. So what I teach in my holistic wellness programs that I bring to the corporate setting are 2-minute, 3-minute, or 5-minute techniques that you can incorporate into your workday, so that you can take this pause that you really. And it's a must. It's not when I have time, I'll do this. It's like, nope. If you don't do this, for sure you're not going to be as effective or efficient or successful as you could if you actually did take the 5 minutes.
Of course. And one of the things that I found causes a lot of problems is today's mindset in a lot of people, that they have to answer emails and Facebook posts and all those things instantly. Yeah. The faster the better. How many likes did I get in the last 5 minutes? I didn't get 10,000 likes. Oh my God, everybody hates me. What I do partially to help with security and partially for sanity's sake, is just, I look at my email at certain times during the day and I ignore it the rest of the day, or my Facebook posts or whatever. And I don't keep the phone with me looking at it all the time to see who's talking to me, because I don't need to be on that much on the edge of things. And I think that mindset actually is a bad mental state to be in, where you need to be instantaneous, and it leads to security problems. On the phone, you could reply to a message that's actually a scam message. You could click on a link. Somebody could be hijacking a Facebook account and you don't know it, and you're talking to actually a scammer. That happens to me. That happened to me several times. And it's always fun when I find out, because then I can mess with them. And you got to get out of that mindset that you have to answer these things instantly, because you
Right.
don't. And it affects your mind. It affects, as you say, the mind is important. And get off the hair trigger.
Yeah, yeah. So technology had, yeah, like everything in life, there's a great use for it, but when you overdo it, it actually becomes a health issue. Just being connected and wired to technology from a mental state, like you said, is definitely a wellness issue. But also just being around technology, you're getting all of these gamma rays that are being or EMF rays that are being sent to you, whether you appreciate it or not. And it's also causing you health issues, which you don't really realize. And then, things start happening, go to the doctor. Of course, they're not going to dissect anything. They're just going to handle the high level symptoms. So you're not really aware of how it's affecting you until you actually just stop doing that. So kids these days, wearing glasses when they're like 2 years old, mainly because they've been staring at iPads and computer screens or TV screens for too long, and even lots of behavioral problems, just because they're not as active anymore as maybe we were when. Well, actually, I shouldn't say that because I don't know which generation you're from, but
Baby boomer.
like when I was growing up, it's like you came home from school and then you spent maybe like the first hour just kind of running around outside in your neighborhood, and then you came back, did your homework, and there's like no question about sitting there like just watching TV, or of course we didn't have gadgets, so there weren't any gadgets. But it's just unfortunate now that and what that leads to is like kids don't really know how to be creative. So once they're done with an activity, like I try my best in the evenings after I'm taking a break from work, I'm like, okay, let's go outside and play. But the moment you come back in, they're like, well, we're bored. I'm like, you just came back in like 1 second ago. Mm-hmm. Figure out something else you can do. Like, well, we don't know what else we could do. We're just gonna watch the phone. I'm like, no, you're not.
Yeah. Yeah. And they want to play video games because it's creative, but it's not creative. You're actually following somebody else's creation. That's
Right.
not your creation. Yeah.
Exactly.
It doesn't matter how hard it is or how big the puzzle is. You're following somebody else's creation, and that's okay in moderation. But it also affects physically. People sit around a lot more than they used to. And I know me, when I sit around, I get a sore back and I get a headache. And I know a lot of people who get sore backs and headaches, who get surgery and migraines and things. What did I do? No, I don't want that stuff. I take walks and exercise the back and do stretches and stuff. And I'd rather do that, even though it's a little bit slower than taking medications, because they'll have side effects on the mind and on the body.
Oh, for sure.
And who wants?
Yeah.
Why would you want those side effects when it's just a simple matter of, for me, getting off my butt every couple hours for 20 minutes and taking a 2-mile walk or 1-mile walk or whatever it is, and enjoying the outdoors without the smartphone.
Yeah, and the 5-minute techniques I teach within each hour include things for the body as well. So it's not just mindset and energy exercises, but even just simply the act of getting up off your chair, changing your physiology. So if you didn't have the time to do a 2-mile walk, in the middle of your day, that's fine. You can just actually get up off your chair, face a different direction, and you can do some, squats, or you can do some arm circles, or, just kind of, twisting and turning. There's different things you can do to change your physiology, which then changes your emotion and mental state as well.
Of course.
Just from your office room.
Yeah, there's also the hypnotized stare that you get looking at a screen. You're at the same fixed distance from the screen all day long, whether it be a smartphone or a computer screen. It tends to hypnotize you. So does the TV, and so do video games. And that makes you less effective in life. And it makes you more prone to make errors that cause security problems and problems in your life. It's an area that I am kind of passionate about. This is one of the reasons why I was excited about this discussion. It's
not very common. I think you're the first podcaster a podcast I've been on where the podcaster is also from cybersecurity, so that's really unique.
Yeah, I saw you come in and I was, oh my God, this is going to be fun. Yes. Yes. I mean, we had break-ins, and we got the first I love you break-in. Remember that one? Where our email server crashed from 20 billion email messages. I don't know how many it was, and then we had blast through the place. Literally took us months to get rid of it because it just kept replicating and we couldn't find the machine that had it. And found a consultant to install Loftcrack and broke into systems, and we had to fire him. I mean, all kinds of security stuff that you have in a big corporation. It was quite interesting. And simple things like making your consultants making your consultants sign a bond or something, or a contract that says they won't do things, or they will do things in a certain way. Like we had people attaching to the network who didn't have secure computers. And of course we became PCI compliant, so that was a no-no. So they all had to sign documents, and we had to test those computers.
Right.
You can't attach a laptop to the system, to the network directly anyway anymore. You had to go through the guest network, and then you had to make sure you had antivirus and all this other stuff. And if you didn't, it was considered a big problem, and a consultant could even be fired for that.
Right. Sure.
All important, all the different things, and those are all people problems. Those aren't technology.
Yeah, so I think that's where, going back to our first discussion about women, there's a lot of misconceptions out there that that the only aspect of cybersecurity is that technical part. But when it comes to people, women, are innately wired to be collaborative and be more of a social and like a people person, because of, they already bring these things naturally from within them if they allow themselves to be authentic. A lot of times they don't, because they sometimes lack the confidence, and there's a lot of fear to be themselves within a male-dominated environment. But if they do allow themselves to just be innately, they bring out their femininity to the cyber field, it can really, boost the field overall, because you need that collaboration with, all of your stakeholder groups, not just your IT staff. You need someone who can speak different languages. So when it comes to women, like they're so used to this, especially if they have families and kids. You're going to talk to each of your kids possibly in a different way, because they're all uniquely different. You're not going to talk to your husband the same way you would talk to your kids. So when you come to the workplace, like you're going to treat each of these different groups of people that you have to work with in cyber. It's a very unique role, and I think women have that. They have a lot of what it takes. It's just that they don't realize that this is what it takes. And most people, even in the cybersecurity field, don't really realize this is what we need.
Well, I think it's true of technology in general, actually. I just was reading about some AI initiative. I think it was Amazon or one of the other large companies had, where they were going to use AI to make hiring recommendations. So they read the last 10 years of history, and that's how you train AI, is you read in the history. And much to their surprise, it tended to bias strongly towards hiring men. Well, that 10 years of history, they'd been hiring men mostly. So of course it was biased. Of course they pulled the plug on it immediately. But if they'd had one woman on the team, that would have been caught right like that, right?
Yeah. And it's, it's what I find really interesting is, even when I speak with other fellow CISOs or cyber leaders within the industry, I mean, of course, 90% are men, but then there's a lot of, I think, misconceptions. It's like, well, we just hire, the best for the job. I'm like, well, what if the best didn't really apply for the job, because, they're wired differently. As women, like we actually won't apply for jobs unless we meet 90% of the criteria.
Right.
Versus most men would apply if they even met 10% of the criteria, because okay, I have a 10% chance of getting this, so I'm just gonna put it out there. and women don't. So you don't know if you're hiring the best among those that applied, but then you're kind of leaving out the rest that didn't even apply because they didn't feel confident enough to apply. So what do we do about that? So I actually started working, I do a lot of mentoring and coaching with women and just getting them to get to that type of confidence level. Like, just go ahead and apply. What's the worst that could happen? You don't get the job, but you already don't have the job, so it's okay.
That's true of everything in life. I remember when I
Yeah.
was like 19, this guy used to pick up women all the time. And of course, I was at that age, 19. I was like, how do you do that? And he says, you got to ask.
Right.
Yeah, but they're going to say no. And he says, well, duh, some of them are, but not all. It's like, oh, well, that's the secret. He said, well, there's more to it than that, but
Yeah.
you got to get to the point where you ask, and that's how you get dates with women. Is you got to ask. It's like, okay, that was actually kind of a turning point in my life. You just have to open your mouth and ask, and I learned a lot from that about life and things. But I think this happens with all minorities. I guess that's the right word nowadays. I'm sure I've heard it from people of color and from different other people groups and things that it's obviously a white male dominated society in many ways. That's changing, and I'm really glad it is. I always tried to have a diverse staff at Trader Joe's. I felt that was important because I got differing viewpoints. I mean, you put a woman and a black man, and I had a Cuban at the same table. They're all going to have, and an Israeli. They're all going to have different points of view, and your problem solving becomes more enriched with that diversity. Sure, you got a white guy on the staff too, maybe, and you mix it up, and where somebody may come up blank, and the Israeli may come up and say, well, how about this approach, and the Pakistani will come up and say, no, how about that one? And you get this conversation going, and the women will have a different approach. And I found that always very empowering to have all of those different viewpoints. Sometimes it was more frustrating because not all of us, we weren't always on the same page.
Right.
Whereas if everybody had been the same, in the same set, it might have been more aligned, but
then you wouldn't have creativity or innovation from that.
I didn't want a group of yes men, so to speak. I wanted a group of people who actually use their brains. And
and I mean, this has been scientifically proven that the more diverse the workforce is, one, it does make a happier team, but they're also more effective, efficient, and also it drives their creativity, because just like you said, they don't all think the same. So you really have to show why your point might be the best idea, but then when somebody else maybe takes that apart, it actually opens up your awareness on like, oh yeah, I wouldn't have even thought that way.
Yeah.
So it's only going to drive creativity and innovation and going to like the next growth, basically, which you wouldn't have come to if everyone just thought the same way.
I mean, I was married for 12 years, and one thing I learned is that I'm very logical, intellectual, to the point. I just want the facts, ma'am, just the facts, just like Dragnet, But the wife, she passed away a long time ago, but she was emotional, and she was worried about feelings and emotions, and I didn't care. I was, just the facts.
Right. Yeah.
And it produced two totally different. We both had to come to terms with that and find a center point where we had the facts and we had the emotions into consideration.
Yeah. And that's where I think the women can really add to this field, because, like you said, men are kind of wired to just solve the problem and move on. Most men, I wouldn't say all men.
Of course.
I
We're being very general here, actually. But,
yeah. But, I'm just talking about how they're innately wired. Of course, some men choose to do different things. That's just based on their personality and things like that. But innately, men want to just solve the problem and move on, because if you even just think about the caveman days, that's what they were geared to do. Just go out there, get the tiger or saber-tooth lion or whatever it's called, and bring it to the table, and that's it. My job is done.
Yeah, deer, dinner,
Now,
let's go get it. And the wife's,
yeah.
you don't think, how does the deer feel? We don't care. It's dinner.
Or you don't, they're not really caring about, like, is the woman at home taking care of the kids, making
Right.
sure they're safe, and all that kind of stuff. So and this happens in our this, I mean, I think it's happening more now since we're all in closed spaces. Where when you're not used to living with your spouse 24/7 in a closed space, then you really get to see the other side more, and it's really up to each family now how they deal with it, which is, I think, why we've been seeing a lot of COVID divorces, what they call.
Oh yeah. Yeah.
And,
I saw that a bit. One of my neighbors, she has 3 kids, and 2 of them are special needs, and they were driving her crazy because they're all at home, and she's not used to it. So now that school started, she's much happier. Her temper was getting short, and she was having a hard time. The father is a trucker, so he's not home a lot. So she was having to control these 3 kids, and one of them is literally all over the place all the time. He's got so much energy.
right,
And it's just weird energy. I think he's autistic, and weird being different, not weird being wrong.
right.
And so now she's much relieved that they're back in school, and literally physically in school, because she has a little time for herself, and she doesn't have to deal with that energy all day long.
Yeah, and I think what I see also happening is a lot of times, since women are kind of used to, because they have to sometimes be this way, they have their job, they come back, and they still gather up enough energy to take care of the household, take care of the kids, put dinner on the table, and they just keep going. They're always on the go, go, go. Now that they're home, or if they happen to be home trying to work, they just get more of a taste of what their spouse does, and just based on how men and women are innately wired, men focus on one thing at a time, and they kind of need that break, or they just really focus on nothing.
Right.
And most women that are, I wouldn't say all women, but the women that are really like go-getters, like they're leaders, they're going after their dreams, like they're inside their minds, they're it's basically going at 80 miles an hour, like, oh, I gotta do this, I gotta do that, oh, like, what are my kids doing, oh, what was that noise, so they're not really taking a break. They could be taking a physical break at times, but mentally they're constantly thinking of this and that, and I see a lot of this happening where the women are kind of like, wait, I work the same number of hours as you, and I'm still, I'm still going, I'm still taking care of the kids, I'm doing this, I'm doing that, and then here's my spouse just kind of sitting there watching TV.
Yeah.
And and it wasn't a problem before, because they were outside of their houses and they came back, and they didn't, most people were running their lives unconsciously before.
Of course.
Right. And now people are just more conscious of like what each other is doing.
Because it's in their face.
Yeah.
And that, of course, it's usually a simple conversation, or even a complex conversation, can solve those issues. It's when they're not talking that they blow up.
Exactly.
At least that's what I found with being married, because I tend not to be a talker. I'm like, let's just do it. You told me the problem, let's solve it. Of course, she would always want to talk it out, and for hours and hours. Like, oh God, when are we going to shut up and just solve the problem? But typical man,
I hear you.
And she would talk, and eventually I just tune her out and say, yes, dear, yes, dear, yes, dear, which of course was a mistake, because she'd catch on. You're not listening to me. What did you say? See, I told you. Okay. Oh darn, my wife radar was not working there.
We're having a real life marriage counseling call, like right on air.
Yeah, those were the days. But you've got a fascinating mix of talents there. The mind combined with the security is interesting, an interesting approach to security. Obviously, you need to have your mind engaged to be secure. I mean, unless you're going to depend on AI robots and stuff, and those aren't going to work all the time. And
Yeah. So, it's mindset, and, when you were talking about, just being able to take those breaks, also from a physical perspective and changing, there's a reason why it's called emotion, because it's motion in, in an energetic format. So a lot of people don't realize that, like they're in, especially if you're doing like incident response, or you're in the middle of a crisis mode. It could be a security crisis, or just could just be a crisis in general. People just want to keep going and trying to solve this crisis like until they're done, without realizing that this crisis might take a really long time to be done. Most crises are. It's otherwise it might probably won't be a crisis. It'd just be kind of like, okay, it's just something that happened today. So when if you don't take that physical break, like change your physiology, you're not, you're just going to get burnt out, and you're not going to solve that crisis. So
right.
and a lot of people feel like, well, what do you mean I need to take a break? Like, I'm in the middle of this crisis. I'm like, yes, that's exactly what you need to take a break. And it doesn't have to be a long break. So, just get up, just go to the other side of the room, look out the window, take a couple deep breaths, and then come back. And I'm sure you're going to react or respond differently to the situation.
Yeah. I remember our worst computer crash. We had it was a simple thing, removing a disk drive that should have been safe to remove, but there was a bug in the firmware and it caused it to ripple through, and the system crashed, and it affected the DR side, and the backups were corrupt, and I could go on, and there was no recovery at all. And I was awake for 70 hours with one of my team members.
Wow.
Literally awake for 70 hours, and man, reality gets different when you've been awake for 70 hours.
Yeah.
Talking about mind, my mind, I don't know where my mind was, but it was on another planet for a while there. I mean, I took a few cat naps and things, but that was my most interesting experience with what sleep deprivation can do to the mental state. And the person I worked with, my DVA, he was awake 70 hours also. So we were having probably some very bizarre conversations.
Wow. Yes. Yeah. And it is one of those unique fields. I mean, because even in healthcare, you know your shift usually, or when you're on call. It's usually, you usually don't go through a period where you're totally not on call at all, and suddenly you get called in the middle of the night to go do something. Like, if okay, you're the doctor on call, you might get called in the middle of the night, so you mentally kind of prepare for that. But in cyber, it's like you don't know, okay, well, tomorrow at midnight someone's going to hack in, so just be prepared to handle that situation. Like, so it's almost like it just catches you on the fly, and you have to be mentally prepared to handle something at any time, any time of the day, any day of the week, even if you're on vacation, and you just got to suddenly shift from whatever you were doing to this crisis mode.
Mm-hmm.
Middle of the night. So it's, and yes, if you have enough resources and staffing, you can say, oh, okay, these people are on call, like these people aren't. But if you're the leader, you kind of have to be prepared to get calls in the middle of the night regardless.
Yep. There was one time that I was going to Fresno. I lived in LA, so I was going up to Fresno for the Renaissance Fair, and I had 3 models meeting me there because I'm a photographer also. And we were going to spend the whole day at the Renaissance Fair, and then they brought costumes and things, and we're going to have photo shoots to the whole thing. I get a call saying the computer's down. Now, I'm 100 miles away from the office, and I had to basically run the recovery effort on my phone from 100 miles away while doing photo shoots. It was a very bizarre day, just put it that way.
I'm sure.
And
that really gets to you. If you do it for a long time, and I'm sure nobody else really understands, they're kind of like, can't you just tell them you're not working? I'm like, kind of not.
Not when you're the leader.
Right. So yeah, that's why it's been just my passion to kind of bring that aspect to this field, because I think the people in the field just don't realize how important it is.
Well, yeah, computers go down, companies out of business in many cases, especially the central computers. And we were literally out of business, so there wasn't any choice. And I couldn't take the 100-mile trip back because there was people to run, and I wasn't going to be on the phone while I was driving on the freeway, you know. So,
Right.
and we had security things where the same thing happened, and it got to be a drag after a while to be on call all the time and have
Right.
those kind of urgencies regularly.
Yes.
Hence, now I'm a ghostwriter, and it's much easier because I make my own hours and make my own clients and things. But
Yeah.
so you work for your own company? How's this work?
So I have to, so I for my security position, I actually work for NIH, National Institutes of Health.
Okay.
But I also have a holistic wellness business where, and I'm also an author as well. So
Oh, nice, nice.
yeah, I have my first book coming out October 1st. It's called Ultimate Guide to Self-Healing.
Oh,
And
nice.
I wrote a chapter. It's not my entire book, but I wrote a chapter on busting burnout for badass leaders.
Nice, nice.
Basically dedicating it to the corporate field. So because that's where I really see a big need for it. And then there's about 24 other really cool spiritual tools and also just meditation tools and things like that. But my chapter is on the 3 of the easy mind, body, energy techniques that you can incorporate into the workplace.
Okay. Okay.
Yeah.
Sounds exciting. And how can our audience reach you if they need to?
Yeah, so my website is www.jothidugar.com, JOTHIDUGAR.com.
Okay. And on there you have contact information so that somebody can reach you?
Yes, yeah, there's contact information there. There's also the links for the books if you'd like to pre-order them. They're going pretty fast.
Sure.
And there's information about all my programs on there as well.
Well, very cool. Very cool. Well, it's been interesting to talk to you. Do you have any final words for our audience?
From a mental health and wellness perspective, always reach out, never feel like you're alone, especially during these times, but really any time, if you're facing something, I can guarantee you somebody else is as well. So, the more you reach out, the more you actually talk about it and put yourself out there, the more help you can get and support you can get, but also you can encourage and inspire others to also seek out assistance.
Sure. Well, thank you. It's been an honor to talk to you. Interesting chat, and I hope you had fun. And there you go. So that's the end of the podcast. Thank you for coming.
Thank you so much for having me. It's been a blast.